good day. It's a day. It is a day of the week. It's a time. I don't know what time, but I'm close enough to on time. It's a miracle. I will wake. Um, but yeah, we're I don't know how long I'm gonna be here, but we're finishing the game today. That I'm confident in. I might perish, but it's fine. Thank you for the lurk, Adi. Alright, let's see. I was just making sure I actually posted the Twitter and everything's working and whatever. I think we're all set. So, I'm impatient, so, send it. let's just get right back into it. The resolve of Ryunosuke Naruhodo. The unexpected halt of proceedings sent a clamor around the courtroom. But outside the Bailey, where Londoners knew nothing of the secret within, it was still a typical night. Then, at a little bit past 8 o'clock that evening, Mr. Sholmes and his partner returned to Baker Street. The 3rd of November, 8:07 p.m., Sholmes's suite. That is quite a meal that he's got prepped. that is a large meal. This is fine. I just the ad was there. It's okay. We don't need the ad just gets to be annoying. Alright. Instantly into the voices again. That doesn't quite...
We have returned, my dear fellows.
Welcome back to Britain, and thank you for your timely help.
Think nothing of it. I believe you had an even more wearing day than Mikotoba and I. No?
You could say that. We were on the brink of defeat in court earlier.
So, this prosecutor, Asoki, had you on the ropes, did he? And he's your best friend, you say?
Well, he's not really the man I knew in Japan anymore. Kazuma's changed. Oh, Mr. Naruhodo. I mean, it's incredible to think that he'd even entertain the idea of acting as the Reaper's assassin.
Well, nevertheless, you must introduce me. After all, I've only ever met the young man as a corpse.
When all this started, almost a year ago now, Mr. Sholmes still hasn't told us the truth about what really happened back then. about the motivation for what he himself described as a great detective's lie.
Now then, I must say, it's really quite a journey all the way to France.
Well, it is another country, Mr. Sholmes. So, what news of Judge Jigoku?
Uh, we took him to Scotland Yard. The investigating detectives there have a lot of questions for the man.
Poor Professor Mikodaba. This must be quite a shock for him.
Ah, yes. I picked up this at the telegraph office on our way home.
But what is it?
Surely you haven't forgotten already. I put upon you the matter only yesterday. You put it upon me, Sholmes. I had to fill out your telegram to Japan and foot the bill as well.
Oh, you've had a reply already. What was so urgent, though, Mr. Sholmes?
Such matters can wait until later. I'm far too hungry for an involved conversation at present.
Well, that's good news, because supper is ready, everyone.
Ah, and what a feast it is! If I were none the wiser, I'd think the trial were won already. Roast beef, kippers, stew, steak, and kidney pie, Yorkshire pudding.
Tomorrow could be a very long day, so eat up.
In that case, I think I'll just seat myself just here. This place appears to be the only one set, with a helping of pheasant as well.
Oh, sorry, Hurley. Not there.
Why ever not? Are we in set places this evening?
Yes, and that place is for Susie's daddy.
For me?
That's right. I made it especially for you, Professor Mickey. That's how you're going to shorten it.
I see. Well, that's terribly kind of you.
It's a shame, really. What do you mean? Well, for a brief moment, I believed it. That Susie and I were half sisters, I mean. Oh, Iris, do you mean? Yes, I know now. I overheard yesterday. I secretly listened to the conversation you had after I tricked you all into thinking I'd left.
What? What?
The misunderstanding arose because of that autopsy report from 10 years ago. But actually, it turned out that neither Dr. Wilson nor Professor Mikotoba are Iris's father.
Yes, about that, Iris. You know,
I know you can't tell me at the moment. Oh, Iris. The pheasant is by way of an apology. I'm sorry for eavesdropping.
Oh, no, no, that's quite all right. Then why don't I get any apologetic pheasant?
So just who is Iris's father? I suppose that's not something we'll be finding out today.
So then, let us dine, while our largely pheasantless plates are still piping hot. A fine idea, Mr. Sholmes. It all looks absolutely delicious.
Eat as much as you like. Eat as much as you like. There are always seconds. This could be our last chance to ask questions before tomorrow's trial. About that telegram from Japan, and about Cosmo. I can't let this opportunity slip away. Yes. Is Mikotoba somewhere? No, I guess we're talking to Sholmes. Mr. Sholmes, what are you doing?
Surely, it's abundantly clear that I wasn't brooding over Mikotoba's refusal to share his pheasant with me. Nevertheless, I felt the need to withdraw from the social circle for a while and look on with hungry eyes.
Sorry, Hurley, but I cooked that pheasant especially for Susie's daddy.
Even though I've played the role of father to you for far longer.
Mr. Sholmes, could I discuss some things with you?
Certainly, my dear fellow. I find myself in quite the mood for a spell of conversation. No doubt you're hungry to learn more of my deep love of game.
I can probably contain my curiosity on that one.
You needn't look at me in that fashion.
In what fashion?
It seems that before we discuss the pheasant, we have some rather unpleasant matters to discuss.
The telegram from Japan. So, what was in that telegram you received back then? Back from Japan then?
Ah, this? I think my lucky stars had arrived in time. Record found as indicated. Duplicate follows. K. Asogi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, J. Wilson.
What? Those 4 names? We've come across that exact list before. They came up in the unforgettable case last spring. What appeared to be a simple case of aggravated murder turned out to be masking monumental intrigue. A plot that involved the sale of British governmental secrets to foreign states. In exposing the means by which those secrets were being leaked, we deciphered a fragment of a message. K. Asogi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, J. Wilson. But we didn't find the names out until the case was over, and we never did get to the bottom of what they meant. All we knew was that the information had been sent by somebody in the British government to somebody in Japan. So, why are the names coming up again now? Besides the fact that all of these people except for Wilson are involved in this case. Yes. Where did the sender of your telegram discover them, Mr. Sholmes?
I have here the message I had wired yesterday. Allow me to read it to you. Enter Judge Jigoku's office undetected and investigate telegram records. Expect to find communication from Britain dated 1 year ago. List of 4 names. Need by tomorrow. Naruhodo.
He sent it to Hosonaga. Oh.
I sent it. I sent it to a detective I know who specializes in clandestine missions of this nature.
You asked Inspector Hosonaga to undertake such an onerous task for you. Onerous. And in my name. I wonder what guise he opted for this time.
My, my dear fellows, it was a matter of great urgency, you understand. Anyway, the list of names was found in Seishilo's office, as Sholmes predicted.
So you mean that mysterious collection of names that was sent from Britain to Japan was... It was sent to Judge Jigoku. He was the intended recipient. I don't believe it. But that doesn't answer the question of what the list of names actually signifies.
I did formulate a hypothesis about that, but without a shred of evidence, I could not have possibly shared it.
Mr. Sholmes looks deadly serious for once. The telegram from Japan has been entered into the court record. Thanks, Hosonaga. He's coming in clutch. Even now. That tragedy we had to go through on the SS Burya. It was all for nothing. Kazuma wasn't dead at all. We were completely taken in by the lie you told us. Your great detective's lie.
I took no pleasure in deceiving you. However, at the time, all that concerned me was preventing the young man's study tour from taking place, whatever the cost.
What?
I capitalized on the events that transpired to see that he was sent back to Japan.
His remains, you mean?
Precisely, Miss Susato. And then I made sure that somebody else was sent to Britain in his stead.
Oh my. You mean...
The arrangement between our two countries was already in place. One university student lawyer and one judicial assistant to be accommodated on a study tour. In other words, by arranging for someone else to fill the place originally intended for Mr. Asogi, I would successfully prevent the man from arriving on our shores for several years at least.
Wait, do you mean to say that it was all in aid of stopping Kazuma from coming to Britain? That's why you...
Think back, Mr. Naruhodo. Was there not somebody who quite casually urged you to continue on the voyage to England?
Listen, Naga, it's been too long. His voice is kind of similar to Cosmo's, but higher, I think.
The terms of this study tour were negotiated by the Department of Justice in both Great Britain and Japan. In the light of Mr. Osogi's unfortunate death, I'm afraid the study tour can no longer go ahead.
I'm definitely not getting his voice right. It's been too long.
My dear fellows, the majority of problems have an extremely simple solution, you know. All you require is one lawyer, and the study tour can continue, surely.
But there is no one else with the necessary qualifications, Mr. Sholmes. We know no other lawyer.
The voyage to London still promises a good month of your time. Ample opportunity, I would say, to find yourselves another suitable lawyer.
So, you manipulated me.
I've often remarked on the extraordinary lengths to which friendship will drive a man. I was quite sure that you would rise to the challenge for your late friend.
I don't believe it. But if it was all contrived, I mean, what happened was treated by the authorities as murder. A woman was mistakenly arrested as the perpetrator. What do you suppose became of her?
Naturally, I did not allow the misapprehension to have any serious repercussions. I subsequently explained everything and assisted the unfortunate soul in finding the foreign refuge she sought.
Excuse me. I seem to remember Miss Susato and I had some rather strong words for her.
Well, she was certainly not devoid of all guilt. She deserved every word, I'm sure.
I wonder if she made it to America then. I'm afraid I simply cannot comprehend it. Why would you go to such lengths, Mr. Sholmes? Why were you so determined to stop Kazuma-sama from reaching Britain.
The truth is 12 months ago, there was already a very tangible omen of the impending tragedy, you see.
Oh,
An omen that, at this very moment in time, is close at hand.
an omen of all these tragic events that has already existed a year ago is close at hand. We need to find out exactly what Mr. Sholmes knows. The list. There is no room for doubt in your instructions in this telegram, Mr. Sholmes. You were very clear that it was Judge Jigoku's office that should be searched. So, you obviously knew. That's where the list of names would be found. K. Asogi. I. Shin. T. Gregson. J. Wilson. But we only learnt of those names, those 4 names, just over 6 months ago now. And only because they appeared as part of the top secret government communications that were leaked.
That is true, yes. But at the time, you were unaware of the background. You see, those 4 names were wired to Japan. Around 6 months before that, approximately this time last year, in fact, when you were both still in Japan. It really would be hypocrisy on my part to reprove others for intercepting state secrets. Because after all, I am perpetually eavesdropping on communications between the British and Japanese governments.
What? Should you be admitting this to us, Sholmes? How? How are you doing this? You, you're perpetually doing what? How?
Never mind the details, but you should know. No secret is safe from Herlock Sholmes when he has design.
I'm sorry. This line is so good. Okay. I gotta restart. Um
No secret is safe from Herlock Sholmes when he has his designs on knowing it.
Oh my, Mr. Sholmes. What a fabulous line.
Now, 1 month after, that list of 4 names was wired to the recipient Jigoku in Japan. Dr. John H. Wilson was murdered. As soon as I learnt of the incident, a hypothesis rapidly took shape in my mind. As it turned out, I was partly correct and partly mistaken. Nevertheless, it was the beginning of all the tragic events that were to follow.
Mr. Sholmes, please, tell us all you know. Tell us about these 4 names and the tragedy to which they're all somehow connected. Shin was murdered, Gregson was murdered. Cosima is the only one of the 4 that has escaped death.
As I said, when I learnt of Dr. Wilson's murder in Japan, my mind immediately turned to those 4 names because you see, there was someone else on the list who I believed to be recently deceased.
Shin. Shin. What? Who?
Shin, as it was transcribed in Japanese script. In actual fact, Miss Asa Shin. That was of a very familiar name to me. She was a professional killer, well known among London's unsavory classes.
Oh, I see.
But she had completely vanished from existence several months before Wilson's murder. So I came to the logical conclusion that she had herself been killed. And accordingly, I became fearful for the lives of the remaining 2 persons on the list.
K. Asogi. T. Gregson.
Owing to our proximity, I decided to take measures to protect Gregson myself. But I determined it would be safest if young Asogi were to stay away from Britain.
So that's why you went to such lengths to prevent his study tour from going ahead.
Exactly.
So, you already knew who Kazuma-sama was, Mr. Sholmes.
Oh, yes. Sholmes and I have exchanged correspondence for years. I'd recounted many tales about Asogi to him in my letters, and the news of Dr. Wilson's death, of course.
So, Dr. Wilson is dead then. I didn't know. Oh, Iris. I know he wasn't my daddy, but still, that's very sad. I'm so sorry, Iris. We knew the significance of the name, obviously, but we just couldn't bring ourselves to tell you. No. But what you just told us, Mr. Sholmes, doesn't completely tie in with the facts. There is one big hole in your hypothesis. A bit. A big hole, Mr. Naruto.
Ah, yes. You mean about Asashin, I presume.
Oh, of course. Exactly. She wasn't killed, was she? She was in Japan posing as a visiting student under the assumed name of Giselle Brett.
I am glad you're keeping up, my dear fellow. But I only became aware of that fact 2 days ago, in the foyer of the Great Waterloo Hotel.
Ah,
And upon hearing that startling revelation, the hypothesis that I had formed surrounding those 4 names was completely turned topsy.
what? Topsy? Topsy hypothesis. What do you mean when you say your hypothesis was turned to topsy, Mr. Sholmes?
I had believed all 4 names on the list to be the names of victims. However, I was mistaken. Very much so. Asashin was a killer. So, this telegram is a list of both victims and killers, is it? Indeed. And it would seem that Miss Sheen was dispatched from Britain with the sole intention of dispatching Dr. Wilson. Her visiting student status being merely a front.
Ah. Which would, of course, explain why no motive could be determined for her actions. So the real reason Dr. Wilson was killed by Asashin is because of the target. He was the target of an assassination.
And, forearmed with that knowledge, fresh consideration of this telegram puts the list in a very different perspective.
What do you mean?
Well, does it not strike you there is another among the 4 who subsequently became a visiting student?
Surely not. No. Wait. You mean...
But, of course, a name you know only too well.
You... You mean... Kazuma? Oh... He... He did say in court earlier today.
Yes. On the 31st of October, I accompanied Inspector Gregson to Dunkirk in order to carry out a mission. And the mission was the assassination of the Mark. Young Mr. Asogi accepted that mission a year ago now.
Surely not.
In conclusion, this document is a contract of sorts. An international agreement, one might say, detailing an assassin exchange.
An assassin exchange? How could Kazuma possibly have gotten involved in something like that?
Let's assume that we have two parties, each wishing to dispose of a distinct individual. Those two parties then make a contract to swap their respective assassination targets. That would be an assassin exchange.
So... To begin with, the British assassin is dispatched as a visiting student to Japan, where she kills her target. And then, the Japanese assassin is dispatched as a visiting student to Britain in order to eliminate his target. It certainly does sound like an exchange. But... what on earth is the point?
Don't forget, Naruhodo, that the British assassin at least escaped conviction, thanks to diplomatic immunity afforded by consular jurisdiction.
Oh, yes.
Such a jurisdiction should be null and void under the terms of the new treaty between our two countries. So, the fact that it was brought into play suggests intervention at the very highest levels.
The highest levels.
These murders were two sides of the same coin. linked not by a common motive, but by contractual agreement. As such, they appeared utterly unrelated. Yet in truth, the assassins were complicit in one singular, devilish scheme. That disassociation and the safeguard of diplomatic immunity were, I believe, the motivation behind this plot. But, but wait a minute, Sholmes. If this telegram is really describing the exchange of assassins, as you're suggesting, it would mean that the Japanese killer's target was never Seishiro Jigoku at all. It would mean Asogi's target was actually Inspector Gregson.
What? Cosmo was here for Gregson? That is... Yep, that is the conclusion I was expecting. Off of that, as soon as it was a contract and it was hinted that Asogi is the assassin. So, Judge Jigoku was not actually the mark.
Yes, that is exactly what it would mean.
I hold myself personally responsible for failing to keep the inspector safe.
Excuse me.
Mr. Sholmes.
I told him my fears and implored him to seek a transfer to an overseas position. Obviously, with the young pickpocket in tow.
Yes, Gina.
Come to think of it, Inspector Gregson did mention that to us at the Great Exhibition. That he'd be transferring to the Paris police and taking Gina with him.
But without informing me, he engaged in one last assignment, it seems. And sadly, it turned out to be his very last.
This is too much to take in.
All right, everyone. That's quite enough of all that serious talk for one day. Isn't it, Hurley? I mean, look at the time.
Ah, quite right, Iris. We must conclude our preparations for tomorrow.
What preparations?
Well, I think I shall make my way back to my hotel room now. This certainly has been a night to remember.
It is a little bit sad, though. I mean, I liked the idea of you being my daddy. Because then Susie would have been my big sister.
I'm sorry, Iris.
I know, Iris. I was thinking quite the same thing. Were you? But if somebody like me would be worthy, I would be delighted to become your sister. What? Really? Oh, yes. Without question. So, you'll teach me all the ways you know to throw Runo to the floor. Yes, yes, of course. It would be my pleasure.
You didn't have to agree quite so readily.
Oh, but wait a minute. If Susie's going to be my big sister, you could be my big brother if you want, Runo.
Huh?
I mean, yes, of course. If you'll have me, I'll gladly be your brother.
Well done, Iris. We must always be mindful of feelings. I've raised you so well. Ma ha 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 ha.
Because being sensitive is your strong suit, naturally. This is going to be such a mess tomorrow.
Right. I'm going to work extra hard for tomorrow now, because it's for my big brother and sister.
What is all this talk about prepping for tomorrow? Preparing for what?
You'll just have to wait and see, Runo.
Oh.
Good luck in court tomorrow. I am expecting a sterling performance.
I'll do my very best, of course. So, the overnight break in the trial's proceedings became a crucial turning point. Wait, did I accidentally... Oops. Okay, sorry. So, the overnight break in the trial's proceedings became a crucial turning point, exposing new truths whilst posing new conundrums. That list of 4 names on the telegram in Judge Jigoku's office, and the extraordinary assassination plot in which my best friend had somehow become involved. I felt as though I had been plunged into an even greater darkness all of a sudden. But at the same time, I felt sure that I would see the light again soon. because I was lucky enough to have the most wonderful family in the world standing steadfastly behind me. Well, now we're really gonna get into the thick of it. The 4th of November, 9:30 a.m. The Old Bailey courtroom.
Before we begin today, I have a brief announcement. As with the closed trial 10 years ago, some astonishing facts have come to light in these proceedings. The revelation that the well-known Reaper is actually an organization illegally executing its own brand of justice. And the discovery that a respected yard inspector was at its heart until he himself perished in an assassination plot. Well, I say to all members of the judiciary here present on this occasion that we will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Counsels, you will undertake this trial with the resolve to pursue the truth to the bitter end.
Resolve. Yes, that is my intention.
My lord, if I may inquire, the defendant may speak. On what grounds is Kazuma Asoki permitted to continue in his role as prosecutor? He has admitted to colluding with the victim in a plot to assassinate an innocent man. He should not be enjoying the privilege of freedom, let alone be leading the prosecution. I submitted a written petition to Lord Strongheart, requesting that judgment of my transgressions be delayed by 1 day. You did what? In today's proceedings, I intend to expose everything. My whole life, for the last 10 years, has all been leading up to this one day.
Kazuma.
Whatever the outcome of this trial, I give my word that I will accept whatever punishment is deemed appropriate, however severe. And I suggest you prepare yourself for the same, Reaper.
Kazuma's bristling with hostility today. I get the distinct impression we're both heading into we are heading into very dangerous territory.
Is that really even Kazuma-sama standing before us?
As an extreme exception to normal practices, I have granted this prosecutor's request. The defense finds this acceptable, I presume.
Yes, my lord.
In that case, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session again. We resume the closed hearing of Barrack von Seeks.
The defense is ready, my lord.
The prosecution is more than ready. Very well then. This preamble has taken long enough. Prosecutor Asogi, begin.
The song. The music.
As you wish, my lord. The prosecution calls the first witness to the stand. Bring Seishiro Jigoku into the courtroom.
At last, then, we have reached the final battle. He is putting literally everything on the line now in order to get to the truth. Come on, Ryunosuke. It is time to study for that steely resolve, because this is going to test it to the limit. Well,
Witness, state your name and occupation for the court.
Ah,
I'll try to give him a voice start.
so it was you who issued this, was it?
Your subpoena? I did what was necessary.
Ha 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 ha. Well, look what the young man has become. I didn't think I'd see the day when you'd take that tone with me, I must say.
The witness will ensure his responses are pertinent to the questions asked.
My name is Seishiro Jigoku. I Supreme Court Judge from the Empire of Japan.
16 years ago, this man came to London as a visiting student. 6 years later, he returned to Japan. As well as presiding over the Supreme Court, he is also currently Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs. I am, of course, fully aware of Mr. Jigoku and his preeminent roles. I invited him personally to the International Forensic Science Symposium as a representative of his country. I hear he also played a key role in the conclusion of the Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Friendship and Navigation.
Ah, it was a great honor to be involved in the negotiations. I put my all into that treaty.
Judge Jigoku, I must ask.
Well, I never. Fancy the young murdering student turning up here of all places.
You acquitted me yourself. And now I'm a practicing defense lawyer.
Yes, and full of self-importance like your friend across the courtroom, I see.
You came here to London by invitation to the International Forensic Science Symposium. But then, without informing anyone of your plans, you took flight to France.
Took flight? I'd have to object to that turn of phrase.
Then explain yourself. What exactly were the circumstances?
Well, I was somewhat expecting this, and I'm sorry to say, I decline to comment.
What?
Leaving the country prematurely when I was an invited guest may be questionable etiquette. But my decision is unrelated to this case. I cannot be bound to testify.
Unrelated, you say?
I appreciate that a respected police inspector has been killed, for which I offer my condolences. However, being an alien, I'd obviously never met the man, nor do I know the first thing about him. As such, I am in no position to testify. It is as simple as that.
So, you would run from all of this?
I beg your pardon?
This case is more far-reaching than the murder of Inspector Gregson. It has ties to another murder, a case that was tried in Japan almost a year ago now.
A year ago, in Japan. The murder of Dr. John H. Wilson, you mean?
That's right. And you, Judge Jigoku, are at the heart of both cases. The defense has evidence to prove it.
Well, Ryunosuke, I see from the look in your eyes that you're resolved to carry this through to the very end, too. Let's see your evidence, then. What proof do you have that Seishiro Jigoku is involved in the case?
Sholmes should have given us a picture. This is a telegram detailing communication sent between Britain and Japan approximately 1 year ago. The communication contained 4 names: K. Asogi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, and J. Wilson.
Hold it. You little. Where did you get that?
In Tokyo, from your office, Judge Jigoku.
What? How on earth did you?
What's this all about? Why is my name on that list?
This is a list of 4 names, follows a certain pattern. T. Gregson and J. Wilson were the names of victims. K. Asogi and A. Shin are the names of assassins.
No.
A year ago in Tokyo, Dr. John H. Wilson's life was taken by a Western-style restaurant in the capital. The culprit was found to be a visiting student who went by the name of Giselle Brett. But her real name was Asa Shin, a professional killer sent on a mission to kill from Great Britain. Shin and her victim, J. Wilson. And the murder that took place here in London was the counterpart to that crime. An assassin sent from Japan, also a visiting student, Kazuma Asogi, whose victim was the British police inspector, Tobias Gregson. K. Asogi and T. Gregson. One assassin from each country to kill a target residing in the other.
What exactly is the defense suggesting?
Let me try that one again.
What exactly is the defense suggesting?
These 2 cases of murder, one that took place in Britain and one in Japan, were masterminded by a pair of individuals from each country as a form of an assassin exchange. And the telegram the defense has acquired is proof of this international contract to kill.
What?
The telegram was found in your office, Judge Jigoku. In other words, the mastermind in Japan was you.
Judge Jigoku, what is this all about?
And you, Cosmo, you lied. During yesterday's proceedings, you acknowledged that you'd accepted the assassination mission. But the mark wasn't Judge Jigoku at all. It was T. Gregson, Detective Inspector of Scotland Yard, as shown by the name on the killing contract.
Very impressive, Ryunosuke. But actually, I didn't lie. The name of the target I was ordered to kill never passed my lips yesterday. The idea that Seishiro Jigoku was the mark came entirely from you.
Ah. You deliberately avoided saying a name.
The defense claims these 4 names indicate some sort of international assassin exchange. I'm sure I speak for all present when I say the very idea seems utterly absurd. Well, Mr. Jigoku, what do you have to say for yourself?
His silence only goes to prove his guilt.
There's another very important point that this new development has brought to light. There's now a distinct possibility that the scene of Inspector Gregson's actual murder was in the witness's cabin aboard the SS Grouse.
Judge Jigoku, you have to testify now. To refuse would put you in contempt of court.
Ha. There's no need for quite a vicious stare, young man. Very well then, as a parting gift to you all, I'll tell you everything I know.
It seems this Japanese gentleman has information that the court must hear. About the alleged assassin exchange and the events of the night on the 31st of October. Present your formal testimony now.
As you wish, my lord.
And so the game truly begins. The assassin exchange.
It is true. It is true that Kazuma Asogi was assigned the assassination mission 1 year ago now. The target was Inspector T. Gregson. That was a condition of the British study tour. However, in the end, something happened that meant the young man was unable to carry out his mission. On the evening in question, a member of the crew was on duty outside my cabin at all times. If there had been a shot fired, the crewman would have heard it, so clearly I cannot be involved.
Curses. So you admit it then, as this communication suggests. There really was an assassin exchange arrangement between Britain and Japan.
A political endeavor at the highest levels. Not something I can discuss here.
To use such a worthy practice as foreign study to coerce somebody to commit murder. It's the most appalling thing I've ever heard.
Appalling. Well, it's easy to judge.
Pardon?
Asogi had a reason for taking his sword to that British inspector, you know.
What?
Which is why he accepted the mission in the first place. Isn't that right, Counsel?
now the pieces. Okay, I. Oh, so many things. So many things are coming together.
Kazuma-sama.
So many things are coming together. Judge Jigoku, if you are the mastermind behind this operation in Japan, then tell the court the identity of your counterpart in Britain.
I am not obliged to divulge that information. As I have said yesterday, I have killed nobody. I freely admit that I accepted the mission, but on the night the plan was to be executed, I backed out. In short, this assassin exchange that the defense has identified is unrelated to the events of the case.
The crucial point is this. Your police inspector can't have perished aboard that steamship in Dunkirk. Because if he'd been shot in the cabin, it's inconceivable that a member of the crew would not have heard it.
That's right. Gregson was killed after returning to London, in the room on Fresno Street. And the perpetrator of the crime was the Reaper, Beric von Zieks. The prosecution's accusation remains unchanged. To think that a seemingly innocent foreign exchange program was a facade for such Machiavellian dealings. Clearly, it's a plot only a government minister and high-ranking judge, such as the witness, could hope to execute.
Well, I seem to recall that it was someone on the British side who controlled everything.
Be that as it may, it is not the place of this court to pursue this villainous assassin exchange plot. We are concerned only with the tangible events pertaining to the murder of Inspector Gregson. Is the defense clear on that point, counsel?
Yes, my lord. I'll keep that in mind as I cross-examine the witness. The assassin exchange. I guess it's just assumed that Sholmes gave us these pieces of evidence. I don't know. I don't want to press him because I don't want to make Strongheart angry, and I can move this forward immediately.
Objection!
Yes, as the court has heard, there was a crewman posted outside Judge Jigoku's cabin. However, we can be sure that contrary to the witness's claim, the guard wasn't there at all times.
What?
I have here a notice of a particular event that was scheduled to take place aboard the steamship on the 31st.
Where did you get that?
It's evidence gathered by Mr. Herlock Sholmes. You were... you were acquainted yesterday, if you remember.
Herlock Sholmes again.
According to this itinerary, after leaving the port of Dunkirk at exactly 10 p.m., and for a period of 20 minutes, all crewmen of the SS Grouse were gathered on deck for an evacuation drill.
All crewmen were away from their posts.
And during that 20-minute interval, of course, any gunshots emanating from your cabin would have been heard by no one. In summary, Judge Jigoku, you had ample opportunity to commit the crime.
Ah!
Objection!
A 20-minute window of opportunity. That is an excellent find, Ryunosuke. But it amounts to nothing.
Why?
Because the witness clearly stated in his testimony that no incident occurred in his cabin. Unless you have some decisive evidence that can show his testimony to be false. Your accusation is nothing more than conjecture. Very true. Well, counsel.
I have that evidence as well. Inspector Gregson was killed in Judge Jigoku's cabin that night. I am certain of it. Because the defense has evidence to prove it.
You will present the evidence for the defense at once, counsel. What proof do you have that the victim's life was taken in Jigoku's cabin on the 31st of October?
So funny thing that, part of, I got a piece of Gregson's watch, in fact. Judge Jigoku, this was found in your cabin yesterday.
What is that? The crown of a pocket watch.
A pocket watch.
And if you will observe, the victim's pocket watch, which we know he treasured, is missing precisely that part.
It can't be.
Moreover, this crown is a perfect fit on the spindle protruding from the victim's watch. Now, the fact that this was retrieved from Judge Jigoku's cabin tells us that the victim's watch almost certainly broke there.
Grr.
In other words, the victim was killed on the 31st during the 20-minute evacuation drill in the cabin occupied by you, Judge Jigoku.
Well, you're razor sharp, aren't you? You young murderer.
Objection!
Expertly,
Sorry, Gus, I'm so happy.
expertly maneuvered, Ryunosuke. And your argument sounds entirely plausible. At first. But rather like this pocket watch, it is full of cracks.
What?
And I believe Judge Jigoku feels the same way.
I was wrong to acquit you earlier in the year.
Sorry.
If I'd known it would result in anyone having to listen to this drivel, I would have declared you guilty just to spare the world of your ridiculous bombast.
That's a terrifying thing to say.
I think it's clear that the witness will have to give further testimony.
When you hear what actually happened in my cabin that night, you'll notice the pitfall into which you've stumbled.
Prior to your renewed testimony, I would like to clarify one point. The fact that this part of the victim's watch was discovered in your cabin means that you acknowledge he was there, I presume.
Yes, I do.
Very well, then. You may proceed to give your formal testimony about what exactly happened in your cabin aboard the ship on the evening of the 31st of October.
Of course. As a man of the law, I have no intention of obstructing justice.
The events in the cabin.
I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin after finishing my meal in the dining room. When I walked through the door, a mustachioed Englishman was there foolishly waving a gun at me. I soon took care of him with an ippon seoi throw, though he couldn't wait to run away after that. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It has nothing to do with his murder. The inspector was clearly killed, having returned to Britain because his body was found in London.
Ippon seoi.
A common jujutsu martial arts technique in my country. I was careful not to use too much force, but the man obviously landed too heavily for his watch to take.
So, there you know, Ske Naruhodo. I imagine you can see the flaw in your logic now, can't you?
What?
The fact that the pocket watch was broken in the witness's cabin in no way proves that the victim's murder took place there.
Ah!
I've no doubt the inspector intended to kill me, but he didn't manage to pull the trigger.
Yes, because he was merely the tactician, not in the Reaper's hand of death.
Well,
The testimony appears to make perfect sense as far as I can tell.
let me express my deep gratitude for your understanding, my lord.
But if this testimony holds, Judge Jigoku will be deemed to have no involvement in the case.
Well, counsel, I really see no reason for wasting precious court time here on a cross-examination.
Sorry, my lord. The defense has a right to cross-examine it, and I don't intend to squander that.
You're an embarrassment to your countrymen, not knowing when you're beaten.
In that case, proceed, Mr. Naruto.
Because the so-called guard posted at your cabin door had just let your killer pass, you mean?
Apparently, Gregson told the crewman he was a police inspector, which was the truth, of course.
He wouldn't have had his identification with him, though.
He had his trench coat and mustache. Not to mention the bag of chips. I imagine the crewman was convinced.
But the man accompanying him would have had 2 swords slung around his waist.
You mean me?
Who else?
Yes, that's true. You would have hoped the sight of a few swords might have set off alarm bells in the guard's head.
The point is, I left the cabin before its occupant returned, and I immediately disembarked the ship.
Certainly. All I can tell you is that only the inspector was waiting for me when I arrived back at my cabin.
And you entered without any inkling of suspicion?
That's right. None whatsoever.
Obviously, you're talking about Gregson.
Yes, and though at the time I didn't know the man's name. And there was no time for introductions. I value my life over manners.
By which you mean that the inspector was there to assassinate you, I suppose?
That was certainly the impression given by the gun pointing in my direction. But I've never seen the muzzle of a revolver shake about so much in all my life. Anyone would think the man had never shot somebody before.
Believe it or not, most of us haven't.
Anyway, there was no time to call for help of the crewman at the door, so I dealt with the man myself.
Even though the man had a gun, that was a very brave move, wasn't it?
Ah ha 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 ha. My Ippon Seoi is far faster than a bullet, I can assure you.
But surely all that commotion caused the crewman to come in, didn't it?
Yes, of course. He burst in immediately without knocking. The inspector hurled himself at the stocky fellow and just managed to slip past him and make his escape.
The outstanding guard does it again.
Luckily, there aren't many situations I can't get out of using a quick Ippon Seoi throw.
The crown snapped off and the glass covering the face of the watch was cracked.
preferable to the man's head being pulled off or spine cracking, wouldn't you say?
Sorry. Is he implying that he can rip a man's head off? Is that what he's saying? Is that what he has just claimed? Oh god. That is certainly a claim if I've heard one.
Not.
Sorry, excuse me. 1 second. My hair's in my eye. Okay.
Not that the man was spared for long. A bullet to the chest soon saw to that. But the point is, the broken pocket watch doesn't prove that a murder took place.
Absolutely not. All the watch proves is the power of my jujutsu throw.
Whatever you say, it doesn't quite ring true that no shot was fired in the cabin. Because there was an obvious bullet hole in the wall.
What are you talking about? That's what the star of your lowbrow detective stories told you, is it? Well, I don't care for such fiction.
Yeah, Sholmes, you should have given us a picture.
Haven't you worked it out yet, you little stripling? No murder took place in my cabin. The inspector was clearly killed, having returned to Britain.
There is no evidence that ever proves the victim returned to London alive. Or that there's no evidence that proves the victim ever returned to London alive.
Just take a moment to think of that idea of yours now through. Just take a moment to think that idea of yours through now, stripling.
I'm reading wrong. It's okay. What?
If the inspector was killed on the steamship in France, how on earth could he have gotten back to Britain? When people die, their bodies remain at the same spot. It's a devil of a thing.
Well, then obviously the culprit must have moved the body.
How exactly? Carrying a corpse off a ship in your arms would raise a few eyebrows, don't you think?
Well, yes, that is true, but...
All passengers and luggage is inspected when it is unloaded from arriving vessels. And I would like to think that the border police would query the corpse of an English gentleman as hand luggage. If the murder had taken place aboard the ship, you would imagine the body would have been disposed of at sea. There would be no sense in risking being caught by attempting to transport the body back to Britain.
Excuse me. So... So here's the thing. Here's the thing about this. So... So Gregson... Gregson, Cosma, and the judge were in the cabin. For some reason, Cosma attacked Gregson, which was blocked by this trunk. Gregson had to have been shot in there. So the only explanation... Well, let's see. If I remember correctly, the cabin had no windows to the outside. Or anything. So, because of the window in which Gregson was killed, it actually wouldn't have been viable to take the corpse up to the deck and dump it overboard, because the entirety of the crew is up there. Right? Which means he had to smuggle it. We saw that his trunk was big enough to do so. And during that 20-minute interval, it also would have been possible to get Gregson's body into the freezer because all of the crew were on deck. So the only question would have been, how would he have gotten the corpse out of the freezer and off the ship? That is what we need to ask ourselves. It could be possible to say that it was hidden within other chilled goods. But then, in theory, it should have been inspected. The only thing that probably would not have been inspected is Jigoku's own trunk. Jigoku's trunk would not have likely been inspected due to his diplomatic immunity, or whatever. He's the foreign minister, so there's a chance he would be able to get around it. That's killed that idea then. But perhaps not. Mr. Sato? We have heard that the first-class passengers were under constant scrutiny by the crewmen posted to guard them. Which would also mean the culprit had no opportunity to dispose of the body in the sea. Yes, that is true. So transporting the body to Britain may have been the only viable alternative.
Dear me. You really are new to this, aren't you? I thought it had been perfectly clear, but it seems I'm going to have to explain it in words you can understand. I think I ought to alter my testimony. With your consent, of course, my lord.
I have no objection. State your amended testimony now.
There's no possible way I could have transported the victim's corpse back to Britain.
There's an idea.
Think about it, stripling. All passengers and crew disembarked at the same time and passed through the same checks at the border. The symposium guests were then driven straight to the hotel in carriages organized by the ministry.
And we met you as soon as you arrived at the hotel.
So you did? Well then, remind me, did I have a corpse over my shoulder at the time?
What? No.
So we're in agreement then. I couldn't possibly have brought the inspector's body back to Britain. Unless, of course, they've developed some clever device these days to instantly move things from A to B.
How dare you? How dare you bring that up? Funny you should say that.
Professor Hairbrain's invention didn't actually work, if you remember, Mr. Naruto.
Yes, of course.
The defense has become unusually quiet, I notice.
Yes, because there's really nothing more to say.
That was a reminder because we actually have his trunk in the picture. So that's the story.
Well, I suppose, if you think about it. Whenever you drop a teacup in the office and it breaks, we don't say, Mr. Naruto must have been murdered there, do we?
Is that a veiled threat about what might happen to me if I break another one?
And the fact is that Inspector Gregson's body was found in the little room on Fresno Street. If he really was killed in Judge Jigoku's cabin,
The body would have had to been moved somehow, obviously. Transporting a dead body over a country border. That would be impossible for the majority of people. So there must have been some special circumstances that made it possible for the culprit then.
that could be a vital realization, I think. Mr. Naruto?
Yep, I'm a couple steps ahead here. So, what do you say about your absolutely massive luggage?
Objection!
There's no possible way you could have moved Inspector Gregson's body, you say? I would say the opposite is true.
And what's that supposed to mean?
Far from being impossible for you to do. The transporting of Inspector Gregson's body back to Britain is something only you could do.
What are you talking about, Leinosuke?
As well as being a judge, Mr. Jigoku is also Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs. Which means he's exempt from having his luggage searched when he enters the country. We learned that when we first met you upon arrival in London. We learned that.
Well, all those passport checks and luggage searches at the border took rather a lot of time. I must say I'm very envious of your ministerial status. You didn't have to go through any of that, did you? Ah, I knew you were jealous. Ah ha 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 ha.
I presume you recall this, Judge Jigoku? It is a photograph that we took in the foyer of the hotel to mark the occasion. As the court will note, you have with you your large travel trunk. Large enough, in fact, to have a corpse inside.
Mr. Naruto, surely you're not suggesting...
I'm afraid I am, yes. 3 days ago, when we were chatting innocently with the new arrivals from Japan in the hotel, the body of Inspector Gregson was just meters away from us, inside Judge Jigoku's trunk.
Order. Order. Order in the court. I am skeptical, Counsel, that a grown man's body could fit inside even the largest travel trunk.
It could. Because I happen to know that the witness himself, a man of considerable size, fits inside his trunk. And verifying that would be extremely simple, wouldn't it, Judge Jigoku?
But inside his trunk, how horrifying.
And after we'd spoken with you at the Great Waterloo Hotel, you had the opportunity to visit the apparent scene on Fresno Street. Taking your trunk with you in a cab to deposit the inspector's body.
I don't have to listen to this nonsense.
Dr. Gory, the coroner who examined the body, has confirmed the possibility. She's acknowledged that there are signs that steps may have been taken to disguise the true time of death. The onset of the body's decomposition could have been delayed by storing it in a refrigerator.
Counsel, as I remember explaining yesterday, refrigerators of the requisite size are few and far between.
Yes, I'm sure they are. But one place they're certainly found is on large ocean liners. Such ships are equipped with electrically refrigerated cold rooms to keep food fresh on their long sea voyages. And the SS Grouse is no exception. Professor Mikotaba told me about it only yesterday. Well, Judge Jigoku. However much you prolong this debate, you can't eliminate the truth. All the evidence points to you being the killer.
Ha 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 ha. Well, this is all very heartening. I can see that it was a wise move letting Asogi and you embark on this study tour.
What are you talking about now?
Logical reasoning, of course. All court proceedings will be built on logical reasoning in the new century. And I can see that you've both laid firm foundations for that already.
Judge Jigoku, please, stop diverting attention away from the issue at hand. The defense has made an accusation against you. How do you respond?
Respond? There's really no need for me to respond, is there?
Why ever not?
Because before you can even begin to answer the question of when the victim was killed, you must first establish one key fact. Where was the victim killed? It's quite logical.
The actual scene of the crime.
The prosecution's stance is unaltered. The killing took place on Fresno Street when the gunshot was heard. As the accused, Beric von Zieks, shot the victim at point-blank range. Since no tangible evidence exists to disprove the prosecution's claim at this time, the defense's deductions amount to little more than an elaborate fairy tale.
I'm afraid that's how the logical reasoning the British are known for really works, young stripling.
The victim was shot in that little room on Fresno Street and died instantly? I'm afraid it's the prosecution's claim that's the only fairy tale here.
How can you say that?
Quite simply. Because that claim directly contradicts a certain piece of evidence in our possession.
Very tantalizing, counsel. I think you had better explain yourself to the court. Don't you?
The prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene in Fresno Street. But this evidence clearly contradicts that claim. The trunk was there. The evidence I have that refutes this is his watch, right? Because when the watch was damaged, it kept ticking. So, that doesn't really work. Is it the trunk? I want to say it's the watch. It might be wrong, but whatever. I'll have to think more. It's either the watch or this trunk.
Take that!
Take it.
Perhaps my Japanese friend's inexplicable thinking is why people talk of the mystique of the East.
In case you hadn't noticed, I'm not the only Japanese around here. Do you even have a mirror? Take it. Was the victim killed in the room on Fresno Street, or was he moved there after his death? There's one piece of evidence that we have that shows the answer to that question surprisingly clearly.
Are you going to try again, or can't you hold your hand steady enough to point it out?
Prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he shot at the scene. We're working with more recent evidence. And that one doesn't help. Is it the trunk? Oh, it would be the trunk. Because if the trunk was just like only at Fresno Street, then Kazuma's sword, then Karuma couldn't have been used to damage it. I think it's the trunk.
Take that!
Okay, no, I'm dumb. I mean, that's an argument that makes sense. Evidence that he did not die instantly. The autopsy report.
Take that!
Hmm? Did I think about it backwards and it wants me to present Karuma?
Take that!
I'm thinking about this the wrong way. What am I missing? Um... Wait, what did it say? We have a piece of evidence that shows he was moved. I do. This.
Take that!
Oh.
We have wasted enough time. It is clear to me that any further discussion of this case will be fruitless. Beric von Zeeks, I would like to think that, however misguided, you acted out of a sense of justice nonetheless, though it pains me to have reached this conclusion.
No, wait, my lord. Yeah, uh... Evidence that proves he was moved. Okay, so... Is it this gun? I'm guessing this won't help, but it'd be funny. No, I don't think so. Evidence that he was not killed instantly and was moved. Every train of thought I could think of didn't help. Let me look at the picture of Gregson. Can we see the bag of chips in his pocket? Wait, because would it be the position of the body? Because... he was shot from the front, resulting in instant death. I think it's the position of the body. I feel like you wouldn't have naturally fallen like that. Let's try this photograph.
Take that!
Okay, so that's what I was supposed to... Okay. I'm so sad. Okay. Whatever. We got it. I'm gonna have to go refill my water really quick. Sorry, that one was a little bit of a struggle. Because I tend to get tunnel vision. So, like, if I start trying to solve it the way the game doesn't want it to be solved, then, like, it sometimes is, I could just get a little bit stuck. But yeah. I'm gonna go refill my water. I'll be back in, like, a minute. So, be right back. All set. More water. Hydration must be maintained. But yeah, I forgot to clean the water bottle before the stream, so I don't have as much water. But it's fine. Okay.
A photograph of the victim in the very location you claim he was not killed.
Yes. But the point is the posture of the body itself. Okay, so that was what I was supposed to notice. The posture of the body was suspicious. Oh god. Sorry, my mouse wheel. The mouse wheel. Okay. Yes, but the point is the posture of the body itself. If Inspector Gregson had been shot there in that room, it is out of the question that his body would have been curled up in a ball like that.
Objection. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but your logic is flawed. He could easily have adopted that fetal position due to the pain of the shot, which subsequently proved fatal.
Objection.
I'm sorry to disappoint you, Judge Jigoku. But it's your logic that is flawed.
What?
According to this autopsy report, the victim died instantly. He would have felt no pain, much less have been able to draw himself into that position.
Ah.
Which begs the question of why the victim's body is curled up that way. Though, the answer should be abundantly clear by now.
You're suggesting.
The inspector's body took on that posture ahead of its arrival on Fresno Street, before it was coldly turned out on the floor from the inside of a very large travel trunk.
No.
You're quite right. The shape of the body. It looks exactly as if it had been kept in a confined space.
We're getting there. Judge Jigoku, present your trunk for examination. I believe it's very possible that it will contain traces of the victim's blood.
Ah. Present my trunk. I refuse.
What?
On what grounds?
I'm the Minister of Foreign Affairs from the Empire of Japan. I shouldn't have to put up with this treatment just because of some stripling's baseless accusations.
In other words, Judge Jigoku, there is blood in your trunk.
I decline to answer that. As the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have privileges that...
At the moment, you're not a government minister. You're a witness in a trial in Britain's highest court. I don't care who you are, or what your status outside of this courtroom might be. You will not withhold information. Nothing is more important than the truth.
Wah!
Order. Order in the court. Well, Mr. Jigoku, what's it to be? You can't be serious. You did it.
Have you no shame at all, Kazuma Sogi?
What?
Very well, I admit it. I did bring the inspector's body into the country. Inside my trunk, exactly as postulated by the defense.
What?
You. Dear God. Outrageous.
So it was you behind Inspector Greg's...
No. I admit nothing more than what I've said. Of killing the man, I certainly have no recollection.
What on earth is that cryptic statement supposed to mean?
I merely disposed of the inspector's body, which was left in my cabin, in order to avoid unwanted attention. As the judicial assistant over there pointed out, I had no chance to throw it into the ocean. So, I decided my only option was to bring it to Britain, with me, and dispose of it somewhere.
You can't still deny it. If you didn't do it, then who on earth did kill the man?
As you know, there was one other person in that cabinet tonight. He had the opportunity. And moreover, he'd already accepted a mission to take the inspector's life.
Oh,
That's right. Who else could it have been? It was you, Kazuma Shogi.
You. I never thought you'd stoop to this, Seishiro Jigoku.
You've taken the words straight out of my mouth. Prosecutor Kazuma Shogi. You thought that by leaving the body in my cabin you could pin the crime on me, did you?
Well, the prosecution counsel has already admitted to visiting the witness's cabin on the night in question.
Yes, on an assassination mission, no less.
You wouldn't.
So, what do you make of that, young stripling? You've heard my testimony now, and that's all I have to say on the matter. I'll admit to nothing more.
I don't believe this.
Counsel for the defense. What is your position now? The court awaits your response to the witness's assertion. The assertion that on the night in question the victim's assailant was in fact Mr. Kazuma Asogi.
This isn't the dead end it seems to be. The answer's right in front of me. It comes down to Jigoku or Kazuma. Both of them had the opportunity to kill Gregson, but only one of them did it. And I'm just a step away from proving who. Very well. The defense is ready to respond to the assertion put forward by Judge Jigoku. The idea that the victim's murder could have been committed by Prosecutor Asogi is Kazuma said he didn't kill anyone. Kazuma did say he hasn't killed anyone. The question is, do we want to believe him? Because it's possible. It's possible. I can't deny it. But I feel like I'm supposed to deny it. Oops. Well, yep. Judge Jigoku, let me remind you of something you said only a few minutes ago. Oh, it's impossible because Cosmo wasn't in the cabin, because he said in his own testimony when he arrived in the cabin, the only person there was Inspector Gregson pointing a gun at him. You claimed that logical reasoning is the future of the judicial process. It is impossible. Sorry. There just is ways that it could have been Kazuma.
It is, no question.
Well, logical reasoning can prove something here. Namely, that it would have been impossible for Prosecutor Asogi to commit the crime.
What?
The court will only accept an argument that is supported by compelling evidence. So present what you have, counsel. What proof is there that allegedly demonstrates the impossibility of Asogi's involvement?
The gun. The gun. The gun couldn't possibly belong to Asogi. But it could belong to Jigoku. The only way that is, like, the only way that Cosmo would have gotten this gun otherwise is that it's actually Von Zeke's gun and Cosmo took it. But who knows how long ago Von Zeke's actually misplaced the gun, so it's the gun.
Take that!
No, I'm stupid.
You're making the evidence weep here, Rinasuke Naruto.
Sorry?
Every piece of evidence has a role to play in arriving at the truth. They're not playthings you can toss around the courtroom for entertainment.
Never mind the evidence. You're about to make me weep, Mr. Naruto.
I can't upset Susato-san or I'll end up being upset too. We know a member of the crew was on sentry duty outside the first class cabin nearly all the time. So as long as the guard was there, it would have been impossible to fire a shot without it being heard. And that very much narrows down when the crime could have been committed. Started going, it couldn't have been Asogi because he didn't join Gregson in the room. And the murder took place during the evacuation drill.
Take that!
This itinerary for the crew members of the SS Grouse, my lord, is conclusive proof.
An itinerary? How does that prove anything?
Judge Jigoku, the moment you acknowledged that you found the victim's body in your cabin, this itinerary suddenly became much more significant.
What? Why?
On the night in question, as always, a crewman sentry was on guard outside your cabin door. As long as he was there, nobody could have fired a shot inside the cabin.
Absolutely. Because it is inconceivable that the guard wouldn't have heard it and come to investigate.
So that tells us that the crime must have taken place when the guard was elsewhere. And that narrows it down to the 20 minutes just after 10 o'clock as indicated on the itinerary.
Yes. I see no flaw in your reasoning so far.
But the crucial point is this. When the evacuation drill took place, the steamship had already put to sea from the port of Dunkirk.
Ah.
Now, clearly the murder could have only been committed by somebody who was aboard the vessel at the time. But Prosecutor Asogi stated yesterday in the proceedings.
I didn't come to Great Britain to take anyone's life. So I left Gregson and disembarked the ship. I spent that night at a boarding house in the town, and returned to England the following morning.
Which I'm sure the court will agree is conclusive proof. That Kazuma Asogi could not have possibly carried out the killing.
Grah! Hold it. No, absolutely not. I do not accept that at all.
What do you mean?
The boy's just saying that to exonerate himself. We can't trust that he really disembarked the vessel. Obviously, after he left my cabin, he hid himself somewhere nearby on the ship. Just waiting for his chance to come back and finish the...
No, that's out of the question. Isn't it, Kazuma?
As the defense rightly recalls, I disembarked the vessel and spent the night in a boarding house in Dunkirk. And as I said yesterday, I signed my name in the accommodations register book. All extremely easy to verify, and undeniable proof.
Ah, no.
There's no escape this time. You can forget that you're the judge or government administrator. It's time you gave the court an honest answer as a common man.
Grrr.
You killed Inspector Tobias Gregson and transported his corpse back to Britain. Then you dumped the body in the room on Fresno Street and made it look as if the murder had happened there. That's what really happened, isn't it? Seishiro, Jigoku.
It was that damn trial 10 years ago. That is when all this began. Looking back now, my fate was decided that day. I was doomed already. Ah!
What the heck?
It's over. My life is over.
The entire witness stand. It's gone. A British assassin to eliminate a professor in Japan. A Japanese assassin to eliminate a detective in Britain. Both assassins will use diplomatic immunity to evade conviction and return safely to their homelands.
The assassin exchange request arrived from Britain about a year ago. Though it was hardly a request, it was a demand.
And for that you decided to recruit Mr. Asogi. But things didn't go according to plan. Your chosen assassin never made it to Britain. And you found yourself unable to dispatch a replacement. So he had to do it himself, because he didn't know that Cosmo was alive until we spoke to him in the hotel. Because I was already on my way to Britain at the time in Cosmo's place.
And that left me with only one option for carrying out my obligation. To eliminate the mark myself. Personally. Of course, there was but a single opportunity for me to do that.
The International Forensic Science Symposium, I presume?
That is right. I decided it would be safest to carry out the plan before my arrival in Britain. So I enlisted the help of my British counterpart. And made arrangements for a pretext that would take the inspector to Dunkirk. To lure the man in, he was given a sham mission by the Reaper.
What? The Reaper?
But there's only one person who could have done that. The mastermind of the entire operation. The Reaper himself.
Ah.
So, that means that the assassin exchange program was... It was all planned by the Reaper.
I'm not at liberty to say anything about my British counterpart. Anyway, the inspector accepted the Reaper's mission and was dutifully infiltrated my cabin on the steamship. But it was all a trap designed to lead him to France and to his own death.
Oh, how awful.
It was past 9 o'clock when I returned to my cabin from the dining hall that evening. I didn't give him time to attack me. I choked him until he lost consciousness. But there was a guard just outside the door, so I left it at that for the time being. Even the slightest noise might have aroused suspicion, so I bided my time waiting.
For the 20 minutes after 10 o'clock.
I had intended to finish him by strangulation, but moments before I had the chance, he suddenly came round and went for me in a reckless move. I'd received the British issue gun 16 years earlier, being a member of the judiciary as a visiting student.
See, my train of thought was not flawed. But I mean, the counter argument would have been that it could have just been anyone else's gun that was issued earlier than that time.
I never imagined I'd have to use it for something like that.
So, the revolver belongs to you, does it?
Then the victim was killed inside your cabin on the SS Grouse. Which begs the question of why you arranged for his body to be discovered
in the room on Fresno Street.
The young judicial assistant over there has already answered that question. There was nowhere I could take the body up on the deck to throw it over the side. That's precisely where all the crewmen were gathered for the evacuation drill. So before the first class cabin sentries returned, I took the corpse to the refrigerator room.
And then on arriving in Dover, you concealed the body in your trunk in order to smuggle it past the border police.
I knew I needed to take steps if the police were to be convinced when the body was found in London.
In that case, you must have known. You must have had intimate details of Inspector Gregson's intended schedule.
Yes, my British counterpart sent me everything I needed to know. The inspector was due at Fresno Street at 5 o'clock that afternoon, in order to meet with a man by the name of Hugh Boone, from whom he would take back his police identification.
Ah,
I decided that man would be the perfect person to set up as the culprit. So I took a hackney carriage over there with the body still in my trunk.
that must have been just after we took this photograph with you at the hotel then.
Yes, I wasn't expecting a welcoming committee. I was more than a little nervous. On Fresno Street, I spotted a young girl selling firecrackers.
Miss Venus, of course.
I conceived of the candle trick there and then. So I donned a simple disguise and approached the girl to buy enough firecrackers to replicate a gunshot.
What sort of disguise?
For some reason, the inspector had a bright red hairpiece in his own traveling case. So I put that on, although I suspect I drew more attention to myself than I would have otherwise.
The hairpiece that we had found at the scene. The inspector had it ready for the Red-Headed League investigation.
I only arrived at the room 5:15. So I quickly placed the body on the floor. Moved the notice board, and set up my candle trick. I arranged it so the firecrackers would go off with a bang around 15 minutes later.
So, that Mr. Boone, who was due to arrive at 5, would walk straight into a trap.
Except, at the last moment, I made a careless blunder.
What was that? I imagine it was the bag of fish and chips.
Ah,
I didn't notice that it had fallen out of his overcoat pocket when I moved the body in the refrigeration room. I put it back into the pocket the following morning, but... well, it seems the warmth of the heated cabin had accelerated the decay of the fish. Anyway, that's everything. All the sordid details of what I did.
I have heard enough. We've arrived at the truth about the murder of one of the country's most capable and respected police inspectors. The witness will be tried in the coming days. For a crime of such a vile nature, you can expect the most severe penalty.
An exchange of assassins. What a foolhardy idea.
Mr. Jigoku, one last detail. Who was your counterpart in Britain? Who was the mastermind behind the exchange? Nothing you say now can make matters any worse for you. Just tell us.
Enough. I've already told you that I cannot say.
Even though, as things stand, you may very well never set foot in your homeland again.
What are you waiting for? Can't we get this over with now? It's finished. All of it. I'm finished.
Then, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I now pronounce the findings of this court. This man before us has admitted to the willful murder of Tobias Gregson. Seishiro Jigoku, it is the opinion of this court that you should be found guilty. And may I remind all those present of the strict confidentiality demanded by this closed court. Moments ago, Mr. Jigoku signed a written confession, admitting to the murder of Inspector Gregson and the subsequent conveyance of the body. In short, the defendant's innocence has therefore been established beyond doubt.
Oh, wonderful. Well done, Mr. Naruto.
Yes, thank you.
Is something wrong?
I'm just a little troubled by his silence.
The true identity of the Reaper of the Bailey, and this extraordinary assassin exchange. We do remain in the dark about these mysteries. However, insofar as the indictment brought against the defendant in this trial, we have reached a conclusion. I have every intention of pursuing both mysteries. As a prosecutor. As you wish. Now for the formal adjudication. I hereby declare the defendant, Barrick von Zeeks, the prosecution calls for adjudication to be deferred. Counsel. The accused's innocence hasn't been fully established at all. and therefore it would be wrong to deliver a verdict at this time. That is the prosecution's unwavering position.
What?
But Judge Jigoku has already confessed.
Nevertheless, Merrick von Zieks has committed crimes for which he must be punished. Well, it would appear that you have information the court needs to hear, Prosecutor Asogi. Certainly, the murder of Inspector Gregson was actually carried out by Seishiro Jigoku. But it's clear from the witness's testimony that he was coerced into complying with the plot. Into this sick, merciless assassin exchange.
That may be true, but
So what I want to know is who coerced Jigoku? Who was pulling the strings? The victim went to France having been ordered on a mission for the Reaper, only to be murdered. In other words, the mastermind behind the assassin exchange is someone in a position to give such an order. As we've already established, the Reaper himself. Well, certainly. That would appear to follow. The prosecution hereby formally accuses the man in the dock, Berk von Zieks, of being the Reaper of the Bailey, and furthermore, I'm going to prove his guilt beyond all reasonable doubt.
what?
Order. 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 The Reaper of the Bailey is a long-standing mystery council. Are you suggesting you have new information with which to build a case?
Scotland Yard has already investigated Lord von Zieks very thoroughly in that regard. And they found no evidence whatsoever to substantiate the claim that he is the Reaper.
Perhaps, but circumstances have now changed.
What do you mean?
It's already been established that the assassin exchange was negotiated by Jigoku and the Reaper himself. Which means we now have a new line of questioning by which to definitively identify the man. And that is the prosecution's intention here. I must say, I am surprised by quite how tenaciously you appear to want to besmirch my name. You are guilty of an unforgivable crime, Lord von Zieks. And I will bring you to justice for it. Whatever it takes.
I might be... Yep, this is fine. That explains Kazuma's silence before. He'll stop at nothing to finish what Lord von Zieks unwittingly started 10 years ago.
Very well. Whilst it's extremely irregular, I will on this occasion grant the prosecution further opportunity for witness testimony. The defendant will disclose any and all involvement he had with the Reaper and the Assassin exchange. I thank you, my lord, for guiding the court so wisely. I hereby declare the court to be in session for a supplementary hearing.
Oh gosh. Oh no.
Pray, pray, turn a blind eye to the discourtesy, as I verify that this vile and unremitting accusation hasn't soured the contents of my hollowed chalice.
Lord Von Zeeks.
I first had to suffer the pseudonym of the Reaper 10 years ago now. And ever since that time, I've endured the weight of implied guilt that has gone with it. So I welcome the chance to testify now and crush those allegations once and for all. Good. Then let justice decide, Lord Von Zeeks. The prosecution seeks to begin building its case by calling the accused to the stand as the primary witness, in order that he may answer the accusation brought by the prosecution, that he is the Reaper of the Bailey. And what says the defense?
Putting the defendant in the witness stand can be extremely dangerous. And Kazuma-sama is so emotional at the moment. He's not thinking logically.
You're right. He's not himself. But I knew it would be like this. And I came here today determined to face him through whatever might arise. As a lawyer and as his friend.
Then that's what we must do.
The defense has no objection, my lord. Sorry, 1 second.
Very well. Defendant, you will take the stand as a witness and give formal testimony on the subject of your involvement with the Reaper and the Assassin exchange. As you wish, my lord.
The Reaper and the Assassin exchange.
I have never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. That is the reason I went to Fresno Street that day, and how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Clearly, therefore, there is no reason to suspect me of being behind the assassin exchange. So you deny all accusations by the prosecution, both that you are the Reaper of the Bailey and that you masterminded the assassin exchange. I acknowledge the fact that the public at large believe me to be the Reaper. However, that is a fallacy, for which I alone am in a position to forswear. Naturally, the prosecution believes the testimony just given by the accused to be untrue. Ryunosuke Naruhodo,
Yes.
let me ask you, why are you here? What really brings you to this courtroom?
A desire to uncover the truth.
Even if the truth proves your client to be guilty?
From all my experiences in this courtroom, I've come to realize something. The truth can't be hidden. Sooner or later, it will come out. So it's always my intention to work with my client in pursuit of the truth.
I want you to remember what you just said. Enough dilatory chatter. Counsel for the defense, proceed to cross-examine the witness.
Ah, yes, my lord. I know exactly what you're thinking, Cosima. I know you're just waiting to point it out. The contradiction you're convinced lies somewhere in the man's testimony.
Yeah, well, I see the contradiction myself.
Objection!
What is this? An autopsy report? Wait, this is 10 years old. From the autopsy of Lord Clint von Zieks. What? My brother's autopsy report. I'm pleased to see the defense doesn't intend to run from the undeniable truth. Order in the court. What reason do you have for presenting a 10-year-old autopsy report here? Counsel.
This, the autopsy report of the professor's final victim, is an indelible link between Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson, and the defendant.
Not that accursed name again. The professor. The professor. I've personally researched all of the court records relating to that case. I know that at the time, the autopsy was considered sacrilege to the victims' souls. And for a member of the aristocracy, like Lord Clint von Zieks, it was unthinkable. But someone implored the powers that be to allow the autopsy to go ahead. Inspector Gregson. He declared that he was certain he would obtain conclusive proof from the procedure.
And it was Dr. Wilson who conducted the autopsy. His signature is clearly visible on the document.
As promised by Gregson, the autopsy did indeed produce evidence. Evidence that conclusively proved Genshina Sogyu is guilty of the murders. In my brother's dying moments, he mustered all of his remaining strength to leave that clue behind. Indeed, that was the key to indicting the professor for his crimes, and the conclusive evidence that convicted him. It enabled Lord Von Zeeks to avenge his brother's death. Senseless death. What a marvelous victory in court. A marvelous victory, was it? I wonder if that's really true. What?
Could the same be said if it turned out that the key piece of evidence in question was in fact fabricated? If the inspector, the coroner, and the prosecutor all colluded together to cast an innocent Japanese man as a mass murderer and send him to his death.
That is outrageous. Outrageous.
And now, 10 years later, for some reason the secret has been threatened and it needs protecting. Which is why the inspector and the coroner had to be silenced, isn't it? By someone in power in Japan and in Britain, using the killers recruited for the assassin exchange.
Sorry, I have a lot of. Yeah, I'm distracted. Because why is there so many pings? Oh, okay, so that's why.
Order. Order at once.
10 years ago, my father was convicted in this very courtroom as a mass murderer to be sentenced to death. But it was all a sham, and I swore to myself that I'd prove it. Which is why I had to come to Britain, whatever the cost.
You'll have to forgive me if I feel compelled to toast this vengeful Nipponese, this tenacity of purpose here. However, he who fails to quash his emotions in the courtroom has failed as a lawyer.
Come on, Kazuma. You know this won't wash. You're claiming your father was misrepresented in a trial that took place a whole decade ago. You must see that without evidence, that's nothing more than a wild accusation. That's crazy that Ryunosuke is throwing this line. It's been thrown at him the entire game. What a turnabout.
As it happens, I have evidence.
What?
As the court has just heard, I crossed the channel to France with Gregson on the 31st. I went with him on the pretext of being the assassin recruited to kill Seishiro Jigoku.
But my true intentions were to make the inspector tell me the truth. What truth? The truth about the evidence. And he acknowledged what I'd already deduced. There's a closely guarded secret about what went on in that autopsy report 10 years ago. What? A secret? I know nothing of any secret. While we waited for my supposed mark in Jigoku's cabin, I drew my clan's illustrious sword, Karuma, before the inspector's eyes. He very quickly understood what my true motive was.
Right. I see. You're not a Shogi's young lad, are you? And what? You're gonna cut me down with that thing? Was that it?
That will very much depend on the answers you give to my questions. I want to know what really happened 10 years ago. The truth. And that's all.
Before we get into it, let me make one thing clear. I still believe your father was the professor. There's no doubt in my mind. But unfortunately back then, we didn't have the evidence we needed to make the crime stick.
So, you admit it then? The evidence used in my father's trial was fabricated.
It was for the good of the country. Anyway, I was just following orders.
Orders? What exactly did you do? Speak.
I'm not saying another word.
Even if your life depends on it?
That's right. Even then.
So, that's when the tip of the sword broke.
Oh, Kazuma-sama.
If the results of Clint von Zeke's autopsy were fabricated, then the investigating officer Gregson and the lead coroner Wilson must have known about it. And they can only have been ordered to pervert the course of justice in that way by one man. The man leading the case for the prosecution, Beric von Zeeks.
But, Von Zeeks took over the prosecution at the last moment. Lord Strongheart was the prosecutor originally.
In other words, the defendant did have cause to organize this exchange of assassins. Exactly. And as was established earlier, it has to have been the Reaper himself who liaised with Jigoku in Japan to arrange the exchange.
Also note, Strongheart was Jigoku's mentor when he was here.
So, it follows that the Reaper's true identity can only be the man who stands accused in this courtroom today, Beric von Zeeks.
Objection!
Kazuma Asogi. What? What you've just told the court. Are you absolutely certain of your facts? Did Gregson really fabricate evidence for that trial 10 years ago? I heard it with my own ears. His shameful admission. In that case, I know the name of the Reaper. What? What?
Lord Von Zieks.
I gave no such orders. I know that for certain. Which narrows down the remaining possibilities to one.
If Lord Von Zieks isn't the one behind all this, then yes, there's only one other person who could have done something like that. I believe I know who it is too.
You.
I just had a feeling this name was going to come up. The true identity of the infamous Reaper of the Bailey. It's Lord Strongheart.
Take that!
The only person who could have arranged the assassin exchange and manipulated the autopsy results is the Lord Chief Justice himself, Lord Mael Strongheart.
What? Lord Strongheart.
Yes, it's true that 10 years ago the defendant handled the prosecution in court. But he only took over the case after his brother, Lord Clint von Zieks, had been killed.
I can only assume that this is the most inappropriate joke in British judicial history.
Well, Lord von Zieks.
10 years ago, I was very new to my profession, but I had a burning desire to avenge my brother's death, so I pleaded for control of the case. The investigation to that point, the supplication of the Lord to allow my brother's corpse to be examined, all of the evidence I was given, the autopsy reports, it all came from you. I've spent my life since then, believing I was in your debt, for the way you stood aside and let me handle the trial. But I see now, I was very much mistaken.
It was a hugely influential force that caused the inspector in the corner to break the law 10 years ago. And that same force was still felt a decade later on the other side of the world by Seishiro Jigoku. Lord Strongheart. Everything falls into place when we recognize that you are the Reaper of the Bailey.
The court awaits your response, my lord. This may very well go down in British judicial history, but I assure you, it is no joke. Consider this a formal accusal by the defense. It does not warrant a response. A formal accusal? Don't be absurd. The defense's claims are utter nonsense. A wild fantasy at best.
You're not gonna defend yourself.
You claim there was some wrongdoing with Lord Clint von Zeke's autopsy? That's utterly untrue.
Objection!
But I heard it from Gregson's own lips. He admitted to it. And where is your evidence? What? Gregson is dead now. Unless you are thinking of summoning a ghost to the stand.
If only Mia Fey were here. Wait, that's the wrong one. Wait, is that... If only there was a funny spirit medium here.
You mean to say? I forget how the system works in your little backwater country. But in the course of the British Empire, without evidence, there is no case. I have no intention of entertaining some wild fantasy that can't possibly be substantiated by anyone or anything.
Ah.
I don't know.
Order. Order in court. Following Inspector Gregson's murder and in light of Dr. Wilson's death as well, there's really no one left who could testify about the events of 10 years ago, is there? So that was the real purpose of the assassin exchange. This court has no business raking over the coals of a case that was concluded a decade ago. The accusal brought by the prosecution and defense is categorically denied. I take it there are no objections.
Cosma. He's more or less waited his whole life for this moment. Is there really nothing else we can do now? Is there no other avenue we can go down in pursuit of the truth about what happened all those years ago? If only there was someone who could testify about Clint von Zeke's autopsy. There is someone. He's gone to extraordinary lengths to cover his tracks. Even so far as dispatching an assassin all the way to Japan to ensure Dr. Wilson's silence. And Dr. Seath won't say anything against Strongheart. But there is still one ray of hope.
Objection!
There was one other person present for the autopsy. Actually, there is one person. One person who could still testify about that autopsy.
Don't be ridiculous. There is no one left. Who? Ryunosuke, who? Tell me.
Kazuma,
Please. This trial cannot end. Not yet.
I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the truth. The person the defense would like to call to the stand to testify about the autopsy of Lord Clint von Zeeks is
Take that!
Eugene Mikotoba.
Heaven help us. Another Japanese.
An expert in forensic medicine, my lord. Professor Eugene Mikotoba. 16 years ago, he came to London with Seishiro Jigoku and Genshin Asogi as the visiting student.
And what could his testimony possibly tell us?
Professor Mikotoba was the primary assistant during the autopsy in question. He was also the person who actually penned the report.
Incorrect. The autopsy was carried out by the coroner, Dr. Wilson. The report carries his signature.
It was the primary assistant's duty to keep a written record of the coroner's work during the procedure. In actual fact, the coroner merely read over the report at the end and signed it.
In other words, Professor Mikotoba witnessed the entire autopsy from start to finish. The defense demands that Professor Mikotoba be summoned as a witness as a matter of urgency. Whatever really happened in that autopsy laboratory 10 years ago is something only he can tell us.
The defense's demand is denied.
What?
But Professor Mikotoba is in London at this very moment. We could summon him to the stand in minutes.
No, of course he's not going to agree to it. Strongheart has no intention of summoning anyone who knows. He's too concerned about protecting himself.
Prosecutor Asogi, let me refresh your memory, as you seem to have forgotten the prosecution's stance. Only minutes ago, you accused the defendant of being the Reaper and masterminding the assassin exchange. I did. Yes. So present your evidence for those claims and make your case complete. At this time, I don't have the requisite evidence. But that's exactly why we need witness testimony. The professor case is closed. There are no clues in the distant past that will bolster your argument today. I'm afraid to say, Prosecutor Asogi, that you would appear to be possessed by the spirit of your late homicidal father. Now, as I stated earlier, this court has already reached a conclusion with respect to the matter at hand. Inspector Gregson was murdered by Japanese Supreme Court Judge Seishiro Jigoku. As for any hidden circumstances that may exist, they will be investigated in due course by proper authorities.
Objection!
But we all know what will happen. That'll just give the mastermind of this whole venture time to cover his tracks again.
By which you mean me. Your punishment for this contemptible behavior will be decided at a later date. As for you, Prosecutor Asogi, you will be remanded following these proceedings willingly. I trust since you gave your word. This futile game of revenge is over, young Master Asogi. Grr. That will be all. I hereby declare this trial over. Hold it.
Of course. Mr. Sholmes.
This is no place for amateur detection, Mr. Sholmes. May I remind you that these proceedings are closed to the general public. You will leave the courtroom at once.
Objection!
Mr. Sholmes was instrumental in the apprehension of Seishiro Jigoku before he fled from Europe. The court should hear what he has to say.
Lord Male Strongheart, it is imperative that you refrain from bringing this trial to an end at this stage. Is it really? And why would that be? You need only recall your own words from the opening of the trial to answer that question, if I may. We will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Surely it can't be that the shock of being accused of being the Reaper yourself has erased that from your memory, can it? The whole truth, sir, has already been uncovered. It would seem that we have a great many important members of the judiciary present here today. I put it to you, my dear fellows, should the trial end at this juncture? After all, why have you been invited to attend? To nod along to the provocations of your superiors?
They're here to ensure a fair trial.
Order. Order in court. It seems to me that we stand before a door that leads to a new era of legal practices. A door that is ajar. Let us emerge from the shadows of the Reaper's decade-long ascendancy. For you, and you alone, my dear fellows, have the power to push this door open now. The auditors in the gallery have no rights to express an opinion on court proceedings. Silence.
He's right. The judge is absolute authority here. Yeah, if he calls the trial to an end, it must end. But will that really do? I sense dark things occurring behind the scenes, dark things indeed. Is there a single person present who doesn't know the same? Is there a single person present who can honestly say he doesn't sense the same? What? The trial should go on. Summon the witness. That's right. We need to clear up this trial before the Japanese fellow goes back home. My lord, you assured those present that you would uncover the whole truth. Vindicate yourself of this outlandish accusation. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That is the foundation of British law.
A toast to my dependable colleagues in the gallery.
On with the trial! On with the trial!
Well, my lord. You hear the voice of the British Justice, I take it. I think you'll find it will be rather awkward to silence. The court will recess briefly. I have no intention of shrinking from these allegations. Bailiff, arrange for the subpoena of the witness at once. As soon as the gentleman arrives at the courthouse, we shall reconvene. A recess won't be necessary, my lord. Pardon. Mikotoba is a close friend of mine. He accompanied me today and is waiting in the antechamber as we speak. I do believe he's been enjoying a little trip down memory lane, in fact. What? Professor Mikotoba is here in the courthouse?
Mr. Sholmes, you didn't know this would happen, did you?
My dear fellow, no one is in a better position to answer that question than you. Surely.
I wasn't just asking for the fun of it, you know.
Well, I must thank you for your assistance in this matter, Mr. Sholmes. However, you are of no further use here. Kindly leave the courtroom at once. But of course. In truth, I find myself rather busy now, as a result of these developments. Mr. Naruhodo.
Yes.
I trust you have Iris's little lucky charm with you?
Absolutely. It's still in my pocket. Sorry if I peeked the mic there. I was a little close to it.
She sends her regards, and a reminder. If you find yourself at a dead end, the ears are at your disposal. Just one tug, if you please.
Oh, of course.
In that case, the trial will continue without delay. Bailiff, show the witness to the stand.
So, it's Lord Strongheart. He is the Reaper of the Bailey. Where exactly is this trial going to take me, I wonder? Just how deep am I going to be plunged into the blackness of the abyss? Well, I'm ready. I'm ready to head into the heart of this maelstrom and confront whatever horrors it tries to drown me under. To be continued. Okay, I'm I'm going to need to take a longer break here actually because I have to eat dinner soon. Um, so I think I'm gonna be taking a 30 minutes to an hour to go eat, assuming my food is here. Uh, assuming I can do that quickly. Um, so I don't necessarily want to just like leave the stream live on BRB for like that long while I'm gone. So uh we're gonna split the VOD. Um I'll go live again after I've eaten dinner, which will be in 30 minutes to an hour. I will definitely be live by 8 p.m. EST. So yeah, thanks everyone for hanging around, and I will be back after I eat. So, uh, yep. And then we'll really wrap this up. We're getting there. Also the longer break might be good for my voice, so I can go longer. Because Strongheart's voice is a little, yeah, so many voices. But anyways, I'll be back in a little bit. Promise. See you in like 30 minutes to an hour.